Hi, this is New Time on Silkway TV channel. We introduce you with the most visible news and important events that happened throughout this week in Kazakhstan and Central Asia. More details on politics, economy, social and cultural life, with opinions from the most recognizable experts of Kazakhstan and world. I'm Dorian Isagulov, and this is what you'll see today. President Tokayev met with Kazakhstan's law enforcement leadership and chaired the latest session of the Foreign Investors Council. What priorities are being set for the security services, and how does Kazakhstan plan to attract new waves of foreign investment? Is the war truly over? Iran and Israel have agreed to a fragile ceasefire. But what happens if hostilities flare up again? Karaganda mine joins EU's top 13 strategic projects. An exclusive interview with the Deputy Managing Director for Central Asia at the European External Action Service. And let us begin, as always, with the official agenda. This week, for the first time in Kazakhstan's history, the country's top security and oversight bodies gathered for an expanding meeting of law enforcement agencies, chaired by President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev. The high-level session brought together representatives from the government, the Prosecutor General's Office, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Financial Monitoring Agency and the Anti-Corruption Agency, marking a new chapter in interagency coordination. In a world of shifting global priorities, President Tokayev addressed the performance of Kazakhstan's security institutions and set new strategic priorities. So what's changing and what lies ahead? Our next report breaks it down.
To build a just and safe Kazakhstan, the rule of law and public order must serve as the foundation of society. That was the central message delivered by President Tokayev as he addressed the country's first expanded session of law enforcement agencies. Speaking before senior officials from across the justice and security sectors, Kazakh president called for a stronger legal culture, stricter adherence to the law, and the full modernization of law enforcement institutions. At the core of his remarks was a call to embrace law and order not just as policy, but as a way of life. He also stressed the need to study and honor Kazakhstan's legal heritage, a legacy shaped by generations of wisdom and tradition.
We need to create a civic and cultural environment where the law is seen as a tool for protecting rights and freedoms, not as an instrument of repression or control. It's essential that order becomes a truly shared value, and that respect for the law becomes a genuine way of life for every citizen. Achieving this ambitious goal requires the joint efforts of both the state and society. To become a progressive nation, we must cultivate constructive qualities and values, such as integrity, mutual respect, self-restraint and civility. Citizens should follow the law and uphold ethical norms, not out of fear or coercion, but from a deep internal conviction.
Азаматтарымыз әдеп пен заңды мәжбүрлікпен емес, саналы түрде сақтау керек.
Another key focus set by President Tokayev is strengthening crime prevention. He emphasized the need to shift from reactive policy into addressing the root causes of crime before they escalate. To support this shift, he proposed not only legislative changes but structural reform, including the creation of a dedicated crime prevention unit within the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Following the Kazakhstan system for forecasting and for responding to criminal threats is also due for a technological overhaul. Artificial intelligence and big data will play a central role, powered by a new supercomputer currently in development. Kazakh president also highlighted the need to modernize the panel system. And in a move toward more citizen-focused policy, he called for the adoption of a service-based model, one built on trust, accountability and professionalism.
The police and other law enforcement bodies must serve as a vital link between the government and society. To achieve this, a new culture of engagement with citizens must be established that fully reflects our core principle. The state and the people are one. Progress in this area is visible, but current efforts remain inconsistent and lack lasting impact. The problem lies in the absence of continuity and the persistence of excessive bureaucracy, which often stands in the way of meaningful, people-centered work. Public trust in reform, in justice, and in the effectiveness of the state depends largely on the professionalism and integrity of law enforcement agencies.
Additionally, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev turned attention to district police inspectors. For officers working in rural areas, he proposed a new system where each year of service would count as 1.5 when calculating eligibility for promotion. To strengthen public engagement, the president announced the launch of Law and Order Week, a nationwide initiative that will now take place regularly to promote legal awareness and civic unity. In closing, President Tokayev thanked Kazakhstan's law enforcement community, from the officers who serve with courage to the families who support them. Balzhan Samigulina, New Time.
Kazakhstan reaffirms its position as a reliable partner for foreign investors. President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev held the 37th plenary session of the Foreign Investors Council, a key platform for strategic dialogue between the states and its international partners, now more important than ever amid growing geopolitical uncertainty. At the session, the president outlined new reforms, infrastructure goals and ambitious plans in digital and industrial development, backed by strong international support. Here's more in our following report.
President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev in his speech shared a concerning forecast. According to analysts, global GDP growth will slow down to almost 3% in the coming years. However, despite global economic challenges, Kazakhstan economy has not only maintained its resilience, but has also grown by 6% since the beginning of the year. As the head of state noted, Kazakhstan's strategic location, advanced human capital, and firm commitment to positive reforms create wide opportunities for both investors and national economy. The investment board plays an important role in addressing systematic issues and creating favorable conditions for investors.
To reinforce this commitment, we have established the investment board that deals and, most importantly, resolves all investor-related issues following the principle here and now. Over the past 2.5 years, it has facilitated issue resolution for 137 investment projects worth of $70 billion. The board has addressed systemic problems faced by investors by initiating 140 amendments to the legislation. Moreover, a special prosecutor's filter mechanism is now in place to prevent violations of investors' rights.
Special emphasis has been placed on strengthening Kazakhstan's status as a strategic transit hub. By 2029, the country's plan to build an additional 5,000 kilometers of new railway lines. The total length of highways has increased by 1,600 kilometers, twice as much as was commissioned in 2023. This year, construction and modernization work covers more than 13,000 kilometers of roads across the country. Together with foreign investors, Kazakhstan is taking decisive steps toward deprocessing of raw materials and next-generation industrial production.
So, from a service capability, we're looking at expanding what we do from an engines perspective. So we're going to start manufacturing that here as part of really continuing to expand. So I think Kazakhstan is well known for being this hub that connects the East and West. This is actually going to start more and more consolidating itself as really a world-class export for rail technology for other parts of the world.
This time we want to go to diabetics, onco, immuno, and also cardio. This is enlarging the local production, which is key for security of the country. Because when COVID is coming, or some pandemic, then immediately every border is closed, and you can only count in the security what you produce locally.
President Tokayev reminded that according to the United Nations, Kazakhstan ranks among the world's top 30 countries in terms of digitalization. Since 2018, the number of fintech companies in the country has quadrupled, and more than 4,000 participants have registered at Astana International Financial Center. Among the priority initiatives is the creation of innovative pilot zone called Crypto City, where cryptocurrencies can be used to pay for goods, services, and beyond. The head of state invited international partners to cooperate in further advancing Kazakhstan's digital transformation and expressed confidence that long-term, mutually beneficial collaboration will serve as foundation for sustainable and inclusive economic growth. Nuray Asılbek, New Time.
These days, Minsk is hosting one of the key regional integration events, the 4th Eurasian Economic Forum, timed to coincide with the meeting of the Supreme Eurasian Economic Council, attended by the heads of EU member states, including President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev. This year's forum is held under the theme Strategy for Eurasian Economic Integration, Outcomes and Prospects. Over 30 panel discussions are covering topics from logistics and energy to humanitarian cooperation. Even before the forum officially began, temporary trade agreements with the UAE and Mongolia were announced. But perhaps even more important are the informal conversations where business and policymakers negotiate the direction the Eurasian Economic Union will take in the coming years. Today in our studio we're joined by political expert Ozhet Shigerbayev, who will explore the true influence of such forums and what challenges the Union faces in the context of shifting global order. Ozhet, welcome back to the studio.
Thank you, Dorian. Nice to be here.
Yes, it is also nice to hear you and see you again. Let us start with basics. Who actually shapes the agenda of such forums? I mean, is it more about experts' input or political consensus between the member states?
Well, such forums they are more about business, about the business cooperation, trade, economic cooperation, etc., etc., etc. As you stated, there will be around 30 thematical sessions, and there will be around 200 and 700 people, businessmen, experts, from around 30 countries all over the world. So it's not only about the EAU, but it's also about the EAU cooperation with the third countries. As you stated, there will be signing the agreements with Mongolia and with the UAE, but except these two countries, there will be discussions with India and Indonesia, with whom the EAU also trying to create the free trade zone agreement.
Could you explain to our audience what is the role of Supreme Eurasian Economic Council? What kind of decisions does it take?
Well, it's the main entity, the main body of the Eurasian Economic Union. The members of this council, the heads of states, in case of Armenia, the head of the prime minister, and they identify the main strategy of the development, the main directions of the development of the union. So as far as I know, during this meeting there will be discussion about the strategy 2030 for EAU and some new amendments to this strategy, some new directions of its development. And what is more important, the decisions of this council, they are obligatory for each state. And of course, all the decisions are made based on the consensus.
This year's theme is the strategy for Eurasian economic integration. So let me ask you this question. What key outcomes can be highlighted after 10 years since the creation of the Eurasian Economic Union?
Well, talking about it from perspective of Kazakhstan, we can see the increase in the trade turnover. So for instance, in 2015 we had around 16 billions of USD trade turnover with the EAU members. Now we have around 30 billions of USD trade turnover. EAU member states are main direction for our export. Well, of course, it's because of Russia, but nevertheless, it's some markets where we can export and the markets where we can expand our directions. If we look at last year the GDP of EAU countries grew up to 4.4%, while all the GDP of the third countries, so the whole over the world except the EAU, it grew for 3.3%. So we can see that we have a kind of good.
How do you think, which issues are more often becoming like stumbling blocks inside of EU negotiations? How do you think?
Well, Previously, our Kazakhstani Ministry of Trade of Integration, they published the article and they said that there were around 70 barriers since the creation of EAU were identified, and 69 of them were actually resolved. But it's on the level of the EAU. Of course, we can see some kind of problems on the bilateral on the bilateral level. Yeah. For instance, we see it sometimes between Kazakhstan, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, but all such kind of problems find its solution on the bilateral level or maybe on multilateral level. In general, we are trying to create, as our president, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, always stating, we are trying to create the open territory where each good or service or working force can go wherever they want without any kind of problems.
I've got one last question. As you correctly mentioned, there are many more countries are taking part in such forums. What does this indicate? I mean, you were talking about Indonesia, there is also China, UAE, Mongolia. What does this trend indicate?
It indicates interest in the Eurasian Economic Union, first of all, and we can see that there is some kind of geopolitical problems all over the world, and of course it have its input, its effect on the investment climate. And of course some kind of big investors, some kind of businessmen, they're trying to find some more or less safe place where they can invest, with whom they can cooperate, with whom they can make a business. For instance, at the moment we have the free trade agreements with Vietnam, and we can see that Kazakhstan-Vietnam trade since the signing of this agreement increased more than 50%. We have such kind of agreement with Serbia, with Iran. We signed a similar agreement with Singapore. It didn't enter in the force yet, but with this time we can see. It shows the interest in the creation of new ties, new trade, economic ties, new investment ties between countries who are interested in the creation of stable strategic cooperation.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ojed. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, Dorian.
And just a quick reminder, my colleague Ainur Mangala is currently reporting from Minsk, which means you will soon see exclusive footage and interviews from the 4th Eurasian Economic Forum in a Silkways special program, Reporter with President. Stay tuned. Amid growing interest in deepening regional ties, Kazakhstan's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Murat Nurtlev is on an official visit to Mongolia. He held high-level talks with the President, Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Mongolia. The two sides agreed to boost cooperation, from supplying veterinary vaccines and agricultural machinery to exploring joint mining and transport projects. Kazakhstan also offered military equipment built to European standards, aiming to bring trade turnover to $500 million. Let's now go live to our reporter Balzhan Semigulina in Ulaanbaatar. Hi Balzhan, how is this visit seen in terms of strategic importance, and what signals is Mongolia sending back to Kazakhstan?
Hi Dorian, well, this marks the first official visit to Ulaanbaatar by a Kazakh foreign minister in 18 years. The last one dating back in 2006, so not just for Murat Nurtlev personally, but for Kazakhstan's top diplomat in general, this visit is a rare and a symbolic moment. Mongolia, a vast country rich in natural resources and strategically located in the heart of Eurasia, indeed shares much with Kazakhstan, from expansive territory to a unique geopolitical position between two major regional powers. The relationship between the two nations is rooted in long-standing, multifaceted cooperation, a partnership that is now gaining fresh momentum. Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Kazakhstan Murat Nurtlev said that he came to Ulaanbaatar this time with a clear mission: to inject new energy into existing agreements and move them forward through concrete practical steps. In fact, several key discussions are already underway. Kazakhstan, as it was announced following his talks with his Mongolian colleague, will begin supplying veterinary vaccines to Ulaanbaatar with plans for local production. Agriculture experts from wheat to modern farming equipment are also set to expand, alongside with Kazakhstan offering to supply military hardware built on European standards.
Kazakhstan intends to launch a pilot project to purchase 500,000 goats from Mongolia. This initiative is seen as the beginning of a joint effort focused on deep processing of livestock products and establishing export-oriented production cooperation. Additionally, I informed my counterpart of our readiness to support the training of specialists in the field of e-government implementation and space exploration.
There are also plans to boost cooperation in mining, a key sector for Mongolia, where natural resources make up 19% of exports. Murat Nurtli underlined that Kazakhstan is ready to back Mongolian companies eager to launch joint investment projects, where Mongolia's foreign minister in turn emphasized that both sides have agreed to step up work in agriculture and transportation, showing that this partnership is expanding across important areas of the economy.
As part of expanding bilateral partnership, an agreement has been reached to work jointly on eliminating existing obstacles and difficulties in the road transport sector, creating new transport and logistics routes, increasing the number of flights, growing the flow of mutual travel by citizens, increasing import and export volumes, as well as creating a favorable business environment for entrepreneurs.
Dorian, also for nearly 3 decades, Mongolia has followed its well-known third neighbor policy, a balanced multi-vector approach to foreign relations, much like Kazakhstan's. As political analysts told us earlier, this strategy allows Mongolia to maintain strong ties between its immediate neighbors while firmly upholding its neutrality. In today's shifting geopolitical and economic climate, especially amid global uncertainty, Ulaanbaatar continues to shape its foreign policy based on national interests, sovereign values and the clear independent vision of its role in the world. And in this regard, such increased cooperation between our states are proper and timely.
I think all level official at the state level and the societal level peoples, I think we have on the Kazakh minority. They're also happy, and I think it's a very good gesture that our high-level delegations are exchanging.
Indeed, Mongolia is home to a sizable Kazakh community. Nearly 4% of the country's 3.5 million people are ethnic Kazakhs. Education ties have been growing too, with proposals to open Kazakh university branches here, as many Mongolian students choose to study in Kazakhstan, while around 1,000 Kazakh students are currently enrolled in Mongolian institutions. And the visit came with a meaningful gesture. Foreign Minister Murat Nurtli personally delivered 5,000 Kazakh language books to our compatriots here, in a move aimed at supporting the preservation of Kazakh language and culture abroad.
These books were recently received by our representatives in Parliament. There is a regional library in Bayanurgi. The books will be delivered there. In addition, there are 13 districts, which we call Sum here. The books will be distributed to the district libraries as well. There are more than 40 schools, and all of them teach and write in the Kazakh language. So we believe the younger generation will read and benefit from these books. This is a rare opportunity. Every year, books like this come from Kazakhstan. Last year, the Otandastar Public Foundation also donated a number of books. Textbooks arrive annually. Most of our secondary schools mainly use textbooks from Kazakhstan. That's why this was a very timely and valuable opportunity.
So now Mongolia is reassessing its role in the changing geopolitical landscape, with growing interest in closer ties to Central Asia. And the momentum is building. The two ministers agreed to organize a state visit to Kazakhstan next year by Mongolian president, a step that could take bilateral ties to a new level. That's the latest from Ulaanbaatar. Dorian, giving floor back to you.
That was Baljan Semigulina with her report from the capital of Mongolia. Thank you. Iran and Israel have declared a ceasefire. Both sides, in official statements, have claimed victory. 12 days of the intense strikes, hundreds killed, and, according to Donald Trump, a truce brokered through his personal intervention. Yet experts remain skeptical. Earlier, Kazakhstan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs warned that the sharp escalation in the Middle East poses direct risks to the security of states in our part of the world. What were the United States and Israel really trying to achieve? Is the conflict truly over? And what consequences could Central Asia and the global economy face if fighting breaks out again? All the answers in our next report. By stepping into the Iran-Israel conflict, the US president significantly raised the stakes, but appears to have influenced the preliminary outcome of what's now being called the 12-day war. To assert its position in the conflict, Iran launched strikes on US military bases in Qatar, but crucially gave prior warning to Washington. Today, all sides are claiming victory. Israel says it's eliminated the nuclear threat. Iran speaks of a successfully repelling aggression, and the United States frames its role as a peacekeeping mission.
The last thing they want to do is enrich anything right now. They want to recover. And we won't let that happen, number one. Militarily, we won't. I think we'll end up having somewhat of a relationship with Iran. I see it. Look, I've had a relationship over the last 4 days. They agreed to the ceasefire. And it was a very equal agreement. They both said, that's enough. They both said it.
Ceasefires in the Middle East have historically proven fragile, as seen as in the recent rounds of violence between Hamas and Israel. The current truce between Tehran and Tel Aviv is also viewed with caution by experts. While Iran has been weakened by recent airstrikes, its nuclear potential remains intact. The IAEA has acknowledged it does not know the whereabouts of significant stockpiles, around 400 kilograms of enriched uranium. Meanwhile, US intelligence says the damage to Iran's nuclear infrastructure may be far less severe than the White House has suggested, estimating that the country's program has likely only been delayed by a few months.
So if there is a sort of peace treaty and the IAEA go back in and start reassessing, the first thing they'll want to see is where's the 400 kg? You know, is it actually still there, or has it been spirited away? You know, you'd imagine the Iranians say, "Oh, it was destroyed. You know, it's gone. We don't know where it is." But it'd be very difficult to trace where it's gone to.
This means the risk of a renewed and potentially even more intense outbreak of violence remains high. At the height of the 12-day conflict, Kazakhstan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a statement warning of the dangerous consequences for the security of Central Asian states. Experts agree. Instability in Iran could have direct repercussions across the region, from waves of refugees to disrupted trade and flight routes. Here's what military security expert Emin Jabarov had to say.
So first of all, we have to understand that Iran is 90 million population country. It's not Iraq, it's not Syria, and it's very multi-ethnical one. And you know, any escalation, any civil war in Iran would cause the refugees wave to Central Asia countries. And if we talk about Turkmens in Iran, it's up to 5 million. Imagine that there is a Turkmenistan's population is 6 million, and there's a 5 million Turkmens inside Iran province Golistan, which had the border with Turkmenistan, and that huge wave could be not only the burden for the social budget, but could trigger social unrest and other problems.
One of the biggest risks lies in the fate of the Strait of Hormuz. It's a narrow maritime passage through which 1/5 of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas flows. Any attempt by Tehran to block the strait, even at the cost of its own economy, could trigger a global energy shock, sending oil prices soaring toward $90 a barrel, disrupting supply chains and fueling inflation, especially in Europe and China. Although Iran's parliament has already voted in favor of blockade, concrete actions has so far been delayed thanks to a ceasefire. But in a region where threats of force increasingly drown out diplomacy, it may take just one misstep for this vital artery of the global economy to come under threat. According to military security expert Emin Jabarov, Iran has the technological capacity to do just that.
It will significantly damage this export, or the market of the oil, which will make the skyrocketing of the prices. It will damage the economy of major countries, especially Western countries. And yes, it's very critical for world economy. And Iran understands that. And Iran would use that stance as a last resort, to defend itself.
A full closure of the Strait of Hormuz remains the most serious scenario for the global oil market under the current geopolitical conditions. And all parties involved, especially the United States and Iran, are well aware of this. For now, there is only hope that the conflict has indeed been contained. Over the course of 12 days of hostilities, 610 people were killed in Iran and 28 in Israel. The strikes caused extensive damage to infrastructure and left hundreds of families without homes. Tehran has said it is willing to uphold the ceasefire as long as the other side does the same. Meanwhile, the Israel Defense Forces have announced a strategic shift in focus, returning to another bloody and seemingly endless war, the one in Gaza. Dauren Isagulov, New Time. The Karaganda mine has officially been designated a strategic priority by the European Union. A decision revealed exclusively to New Time by Luc Pierre Devine, Deputy Managing Director for Eastern Europe and Central Asia at the European External Action Service. In an interview with our reporter Baljan Semigulina, Mr. Devine said the site was selected this June as one of the EU's top 13 critical raw materials projects, part of a broader effort to bolster clean energy and industrial supply chains. He also outlined a surge in Kazakhstan-EU cooperation from multi-billion euro investments into transport and digital infrastructure to visa facilitation talks that could benefit Kazakh citizens within the 2 years timeline. Please watch the fragment of the interview right now.
Mr. Devine, thank you very much for joining us. It's a great pleasure to have you. You described Kazakh-EU relations as being at their highest. Could you please describe what do you think are the best and the key drivers of this increase of the cooperation, and how do you see the direction of it over the next years, please?
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be back in Kazakhstan. Indeed, the relationship has been developing extremely positively. We see Kazakhstan as a strategic partner of choice for the EU. The reasons of this positive development are multifold. The first reason would be, I would say, economic, but the second reason is also political. We appreciate Kazakhstan's positive role in both the regional environment, because Central Asia is a region where for a long time there was not much of a regional cooperation, which is to the detriment of Central Asia, but also of its relation with others. And we have even further avenues.
And now, according to the multi-annual indicative program of the EU, the European Union is allocating 13 billion euros to Central Asia. Could you break down how much of this percent will belong to Kazakhstan and what sectors?
Okay, this is what we call a regional envelope, if you want. So the main areas of investment will be, one, the Trans-Caspian transport corridor, where there is a need to have modernized infrastructure, but also, very importantly, regulatory convergence. We also work on the digital, because usually when there is digital, there is less cash. There is no cash, there is less corruption. And that makes customs crossing smoother. We are also going to develop the critical raw material. We're very happy that we have selected this month, actually in June, Kazakh mine in Karaganda province to be one of the top 13 strategic projects for the EU. So there's a lot coming, there is more coming. Of course, we don't forget the people. We also want to develop the contact people, and for that, very soon we'll have a visa facilitation agreement negotiation launched.
Yeah, in terms of trade cooperation, EU remains one of the main trade partners of Kazakhstan.
The most important partner.
Yeah, would you highlight perhaps the new project that is going to be maintained between the two parties, or any investments coming to our country?
You're right. We are, since a long time, not only the major trading partner with 45 billion euros, representing almost half of Kazakh exports. And by the way, we contribute every year with 20 billion euros of trade deficit for the EU, trade surplus for Kazakhstan to the economy. But we're also the largest investor in Kazakhstan, which means that our private sector believes in the future of Kazakhstan. And it is important that we also diversify these exports. Today, this trade is very much dominated by oil exports and a few other minerals. Kazakhstan also is willing to diversify, where also it has great agricultural potential. We are happy that some products, I'm thinking of honey, recently have been authorized to exports to EU. So we want to help Kazakhstan that. Critical raw materials is a new area of development. It's basically the future of the industry and an industry of the future. It's very much linked to green transition and environment and climate-friendly industries. It's an essential component for electric cars, etc., for batteries.
The European Union allocated 12.5 billion to critical raw materials.
Exactly. And this will be very important because Kazakhstan, I think, has 19 out of the 34 identified critical raw material by European Union. So there is potential to do more.
You've touched on also on the topic of visa facilitation for Kazakh citizens. It's been a few years as we've been discussing this topic. Is there any timeline when it can, go to the result, some result in 2026 or 2025, perhaps?
I think it's reasonable. I mean, it's difficult to anticipate how the negotiation will be because I cannot prejudge what will be the Kazakh government answer to our requests. I'm very confident because so far we didn't have problems with Kazakh citizens abusing visa or overstaying, that kind of things. And Kazakhstan is not a country of migration or irregular migration to the EU, so there's no reason to believe that this negotiation would not be smooth and fairly quick. And so a year or two, as you mentioned, is probably reasonable, but it's difficult to anticipate.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
The TV and radio complex of the President of Kazakhstan and China's Xinhua news agency signed a new memorandum focused on sharing news content, launching joint trainings and expanding multimedia collaboration at both national and international levels. The heads of both organizations sat down for high-level talks aiming to boost their strategic media partnership and amplify the voice of Central Asia and China on the global stage. Speaking at the forum, Raushan Kazhibayeva, director of the Kazakh Presidential TV and Radio Complex, underlined the growing urgency of building a shared information and cultural space in today's rapidly developing media landscape.
The media shapes public sentiment and facilitates the exchange of new ideas, meanings and values. It helps create visions of the future and fosters trust between nations by promoting the concept of a shared human destiny. As they say in China, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That's why I want to emphasize the importance of strategic partnership between the news agencies of China and Central Asia.
Thus, Kazakhstan, along with its Central Asian neighbors, explored new ways to deepen regional media cooperation, from content sharing to joint training and talent development. The talks also focused on aligning media efforts with broader goals like the Belt and Road Initiative. Xinhua News Agency's Director General Fu Hua, in turn, welcomed the progress achieved so far between Chinese media and the Central Asian Five. To build on that foundation, Xinhua has introduced a new partnership program aimed at expanding cooperation between media outlets and research centers across the global south.
Let's use the opportunity of this forum to advance our cooperation, to jointly plan development, pool our efforts, and ensure that the voice of news agencies from China and Central Asia is heard clearly around the world. This will allow our media to contribute meaningfully to building a community with a shared future. We look forward to the active involvement of media outlets, think tanks, government institutions, companies, and universities from the Global South, including those in Central Asia, to promote practical cooperation across a wide range of fields.
And finally, on a lighter note, famous Chinese travel influencer Tao Tao, who boasts over 7 million followers, has been officially named Tourism Ambassador of Kazakhstan. The honorary title was presented by Kazakh Tourism in recognition of her growing role in promoting the country abroad. Tao Tao has become a familiar digital voice capturing the natural beauty, cultural richness and nomadic traditions of Kazakhstan. Known for her love of horseback riding and vivid storytelling, she shares content featuring traditional Kazakh dress, national cuisine and even the ancient art of eagle hunting. As she admits, her first introduction to Kazakhstan came during the World Nomad Games, where she became fascinated with the country's nomadic culture. That's it for today. All the main news about Kazakhstan and Central Asia you can find here. More special projects about our country you can also watch on Silkway TV channel. So stay tuned and see you next week.